Well, welcome to the Sterling Heights Community Center. I'm Charlie Langton. This is going to be fun. This is a town hall. The name, Defending Democracy. But the point is, what about this election? Maybe there's some misinformation about voting. Can you vote? Is it rigged or is it not? What are these people, the experts here, doing to make sure that every vote counts? And then we will take questions from the audience. I'm looking forward to this. Great panel, including the Attorney General, Dana Nessel is here. Aghogho Edevbie, he's the Deputy Secretary of State. Anthony Forlini, the Macomb County Clerk. And Melanie Ryska, the Sterling Heights Clerk. Why don't we start with a couple of remarks from the Sterling Heights Clerk, Melanie Ryska. Melanie?
Thank you. And thank you all for attending this very important event today. My name is Melanie Ryska. I am the City Clerk for the City of Sterling Heights. I have been with the City of Sterling Heights since 2016. I have been in the elections industry for about 22 years now, having worked for Wayne County elections as well as 2 smaller jurisdictions. I'm happy to be here today to talk about the security of our election process. In Sterling Heights, we are the 4th largest city in the state. We have 107,000 registered voters. We have 40 precincts at 27 locations. And we take painstaking efforts to make sure that all of our equipment is up to date and that it is tested properly before each and every single election. And I'm just going to really delve right into the thick of it right now. I hear a lot of voters and a lot of stuff on social media and news reports about the security of our tabulators and whether or not they count appropriately or whether or not they report appropriately. And in the state of Michigan, we have what we call logic and accuracy testing. So every single piece of equipment that goes out to our polling locations across the state is tested for every different variation that could possibly happen on a ballot, for making sure that all the software is up to date and so on. We test all of that ahead of time. After we do that the logic and accuracy test, we also do a public accuracy test. So that is open to the public. Sterling Heights, we did ours last week. Anybody, a member of the public, can come and see how that system works. So I guess I wanted to delve right into it because I know we're kind of short on time today, but we do take painstaking efforts to make sure that all of our equipment is tested and that the results that the equipment puts out can be trusted. So do you want me to?
Yeah, give it to Mr. Forlini.
Thank you. Melanie, you do a great job here in Sterling Heights. I'm Anthony Forlini. I'm the Macomb County Clerk. I came into office 4 years ago thinking the clerk's office was going to be a very boring place to be. And didn't turn out to be that way. Soon after my election, there was a lot of controversy regarding the prior 2020 election, the election where I got elected as a Republican clerk when there was an incumbent Democrat in office. If he wanted to fix it, he would have fixed it, right? And I wouldn't be here. So that's the starting point. But still, there was questions that I didn't have answers to as the clerk. Things that were going on that people would ask questions, I just didn't have the answer, and I felt as if people deserved to have the answers. So we ordered up a forensic audit of our server in Macomb County. I was the only clerk in the entire state to actually do this. And why did I do that? I wasn't looking for problems, I was looking for answers. I was looking for truths. I wanted to know what was going on behind the scenes. And the first thing that happened when I was ordering this up was Verizon, who is the modem provider for all of our tabulators, refused to give us the data. So the red flag went up in my head. Why is this happening? What could they possibly be hiding? Well, just short of a subpoena, they finally did give us this information. We did the hash validation, and through that whole process, we learned a lot about our elections. We learned about potential holes in the elections. Not that anything happened in those holes, but could have happened, right? So the last 4 years, first off, that forensic audit showed that it was a clean election, that the things within our own system, the things that I control, the things that the local clerks control, went without a hitch. Everything was clean, everything was good, and I was very happy to speak to that, because that's what we want. We want good elections, elections that people can depend on. And I think in Macomb County, you're going to find that you can depend on these elections within the realm of what we control, okay? So our clerks have done a fantastic job. I'm not sure if all of them, but most of the tabulators across the county we've done a hash validation, which means the way they're programmed and the way the results come out, nobody caused any foreign interference into these tabulators. That's important for you to know, because people talk about that all the time, that they're being hacked. And if you understand the process, and I'm always happy to bring people in our office to show the tabulators how they get secured by the local clerks, and the process from the beginning to the end, how it works. Transparency is important. And we talk about this at our clerks meetings, transparency, 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 because if you allow the public to know what is going on, they're going to understand more. We've done trainings. We've trained over 500 individuals across the county to be election workers. St. Clair Shores just asked for 35, I think, employees. We're able to provide that. If we didn't do that, they would be short of employees. And then if you're short of employees, you're short of talent, that's where the problems lead. So we've done a lot of work in making sure these elections are going to be secure. I'm very happy with Macomb County and what all our clerks have done. Every day I worry about this the last 4 years. So in Macomb County, I think you should be rest assured you've got some great clerks and great systems in place. And take a look at your ballots when you get your ballots now. They're all watermarked. That was something else that came up. And so we went ahead and spent the extra money to have watermarked ballots. If you put them up to a light, you'll see it says official ballot on it. So pass it on.
All right, why don't you pass it over to Aghogho Edevbie, Deputy Secretary of State.
Yeah. Thanks for everyone having us here, especially Sterling Heights. Sterling Heights is fourth largest community in our state, and also played a pretty unique role in helping us have our current election reforms. So I'll just take a minute on that. And the past job that I had as all voting is local Michigan State Director, after the 2020 election, we realized that there were issues, despite the fact that we had over 250 audits across the state, including one audit that was done by the Auditor General, which was appointed by the Republican state legislature at the time. All these audits proved that the election was fully secure, that the results were accurate, but obviously the chaos of January 6th and everything that happened that election year proved to us that there was still more to be done. And so we at All Voting is Local put together a report, and we interviewed a number of different clerks, including your clerk, Melanie Ryska, and we got this wonderful tidbit of information. We had about 600 people per day who waited in line to get a ballot just to find out that they were technically voting absentee and putting the ballot in an envelope. This led to many, many questions and concerns. Many voters decided to leave and commit to voting on election day because they wanted to put their ballot in a tabulator. This fact and the information that we got from Melanie helped us decide that we needed another proposal for the ballot. And we passed Proposal 2, which led to 9 days of early voting, which we're going to have for the first time ever in a presidential election cycle this year. So really great work to Melanie and all the clerks across the state for helping us to implement a very important ballot proposal. Now, there are a lot of concerns about our elections, and I think that the top one that we continually get at some of these town halls is non-citizens voting. It just doesn't happen, and I want to take you through a couple of steps to explain why that is not a real concern in Michigan elections. Michigan led the way in the 1970s in having something called motor voter, which was spearheaded by the Secretary of State at the time, Richard Austin. And what that means is that you can go to your Secretary of State branch in our department and register to vote. So 80% of voter registration transactions in this state actually take place through the Secretary of State's office. And so when you get your driver's license for the first time, you have to provide some legal documentation showing whether you're a citizen or a non-citizen. So if you're here on a visa, that's pretty clear. We don't put you in the system as an eligible voter. It's not allowed. If you are a citizen, you're given the option to opt out of registering to vote, but we typically just register people there on the spot. So that's 80%. Now, if you mail in an application to register to vote, you have to supply, we ask you to supply your driver's license number and your last 4 of your social security number. Now, if you still don't have that, and there are a small group of people, pretty small, you have to provide proof of identity and proof of residency before you're allowed to cast a ballot. So it's a very multi-tiered, secure process. And in addition to that, I just want to tie it back to the Secretary of State branch piece of it. When you go in and you get your picture taken and you sign all those forms, your signature is captured. And it's put into something called the qualified voter file. And so that signature, when you apply for an absentee ballot, when you submit your absentee ballot, is brought up by the clerk and her staff, and it's compared through a standardized process to ensure that that signature actually belongs to you, and that is your ballot. Of course, this is a team process, and it's a team sport. Everyone listening to this and everyone in this room, we need all of you together to make our democracy strong. We can't do it alone. So if you are out there and you want to participate, I want to urge everyone listening to become a poll worker if you have the time. Go to michigan.gov/democracymvp and sign up to get information about how to be a poll worker in this state, because that's really going to give you so much information about how we administer elections and also allow you to give back to our great country. So with that, I'm very grateful to be here, and I'm looking forward to answering all these questions.
Attorney General.
Thank you, Aghogho. And it's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much to the news outlets that are carrying this very important topic. Thank you to you, Charlie, for moderating. Here's the thing about the state of Michigan that I think we should all understand and appreciate. We are truly a purple state. And in any given election, any given Tuesday, in a statewide election, our election could go either way. Don't believe me? Let's look at the last 6 people to be governor in the state of Michigan. We had Milligan, who was a Republican, followed by Blanchard, who was a Democrat, followed by Engler, who was a Republican, followed by Granholm, who was a Democrat, followed by Snyder, who was a Republican, followed by our current governor, who is Gretchen Whitmer, right? That's who we are as a state. At any time, we could elect either party for these statewide offices, and we shouldn't consider it odd or strange or think that there's any kind of abnormality when we elect either party to these offices. But what I think is important for people to know in terms of the safety and security and the accuracy of our elections are all the multiple layers of review that we have to ensure that we got it right. First of all, we use paper ballots, which is very, very important, right? So when anyone makes any sort of accusations about anything involving election equipment, we always have the paper ballots to fall back on. And just a fun fact, my wife used to serve as a deputy clerk at the Wayne County Clerk's office, and she was in the Vigliotti building, which is where they store many of the important Wayne County documents, and she just happened upon the ballots for the 1960 presidential election that were still there. So from 64 years ago, if you wanted to go back, you could still find how Wayne County voted in 1960 for president. I thought that was interesting. But beyond that, of course, we have all the work that's done at the local layer by our amazing clerks there. Then, of course, our county clerks, the canvass at the county level, then the canvass at the state level. Then, you know, all of the audits that you've heard Clerk Forlini and you've heard Aghogho talk about. You know, you have lawsuits that can be filed, and we know have been filed. And you know, again, you know, we do have the ability to ask for a recount if somebody thinks that we got something wrong. That is something that anybody can ask for. And each of the decisions that are made, the most contentious decisions where there is an issue as to a ballot, remember you have both a Democrat and a Republican that's reviewing that ballot to make a decision wherever there's a point of controversy during that process. And so what I do is I sort of liken election fraud to the crime of bank robbery. And why do I do that? Because I'm not going to tell you that nobody ever tries to rob a bank. I'm just going to say it's very difficult to do, and you almost certainly are going to get caught. And that's because if you've ever tried to rob a bank, hopefully no one here has, you have cameras everywhere. You have these very sophisticated alarm systems. You have the red exploding die packs. You have really significant training that's done by the employees there. And that's why you very rarely read about bank robberies. And if you do, you're going to read about that person getting caught if they even try. And really, that's how I see election fraud. It's just so hard to perpetrate. And if you do, you are definitely going to get caught in the process because that's how secure and safe our elections are. Now, can we prevent it 100% of the time? No. But when that happens, you find out that there are issues and imbalances, and then there are investigations that ensue. And not only do we sometimes see these investigations where the clerk passes this off to the county, but they also have to, by law, inform the Department of State. They do an investigation. If they find that there is evidence to suggest a crime, then it goes to the Michigan Department of Attorney General. And we do an extensive investigation. And in the rare cases that we see it, we charge. Now again, I think it's important to know just how infrequently this occurs. When you talk about those rumors out there about non-citizens voting, I will tell you I have now been Attorney General through 3 election cycles. The 2018 election, that stuff came to me because I took office January 1st of 2019. Then we did the review of the 2020 election and then the 2022 election. We have had literally one case of a non-citizen voting, a Canadian woman. There was a particular lapse in the system that a lot of times when this does occur, it's sort of a perfect storm of events. But that's one person through 3 election cycles of millions and millions and millions of people who voted. Same thing with things like people filling out absentee ballot applications for people other than themselves. Have we seen it? Yes, but only a handful of times. I think every time it's been a situation where you have a family member who filled it out for a child who used to live in the house and maybe now they're in college or maybe they've moved someplace else and they filled it out for them, generally with the expectation that they would return for voting day. Now, you can't do it. It's illegal. We're going to charge you. But that has happened a handful of times. We have seen a handful of times, and really only a handful of times, where we've seen double voting occur. And obviously, there's a recent incident involving that's ongoing here in Macomb County. But when it happens, it gets caught and it gets identified very, very quickly. If you have more ballots than voters, it's easy to identify. And those cases are taken very, very seriously. And the thing to know about it is that we've not uncovered a single time where it happened enough that it would affect even the most local election. So, we're talking about a handful of times in elections where you see millions and millions and millions of people who vote. And when we do see it, we take it extremely seriously. The other things that we try to do at the office, and then we take seriously, misinformation and disinformation. Really, that's what impacts our elections more than anything else. It's not that the voting processes don't work, it's just people's faith in the voting processes because of all this, misinformation out there about how our systems work. And I will tell you that we just launched a new website that you can find. All you have to do is Google Michigan AG misinformation and it'll pop up first. What are the kinds of things that you can learn on there? You can learn a lot about artificial intelligence and their role in spreading election disinformation. What is a deep fake, which again now is against the law? You know, and how to spot that. Deceptive uses of artificial intelligence in elections. How to spot the difference in evaluating, you know, truthful, serious forms of information that you see on social media versus things that are false, and in the utilization of search engines to get correct information, as well as the dangers of using chat boxes for information. So if you're wondering, how do I sort out what's true and what's not true, what sources are accurate, what sources are not accurate, that's a good way to find out. And lastly, what I'll say is one of the things that we take very seriously in our office is keeping voters safe and keeping election workers safe. So what we have done this year, and we've done it every other year that I've been in office during our statewide elections, is we coordinate with all levels of law enforcement. So state police, the county sheriffs, the municipal law enforcement, and we also work with, you know, the FBI and Homeland Security. And we're all working together to ensure that people are safe. Now, one of the benefits, of course, to the new voting rules, which again were implemented because of the voters of the state of Michigan who wanted to have early voting, who wanted to have no reason absentee voting, is that you don't have to go in on election day. We're going to make sure if you do want to vote on election day, you are safe. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, of course, there's all these other options available to you. But nevertheless, we coordinate with all levels of law enforcement. We send out a memo every year that goes over all the laws, because they have changed considerably in the last few years. Here's all the laws. Here's our recommendations as to how to handle certain situations we've seen. We run tabletop exercises to make sure that we're contemplating, we're anticipating any set of circumstances. And you're not going to see police officers right there in your polling precinct, and we do that intentionally because we don't ever want a situation where anyone feels, you know, threatened or intimidated. But we are going to make sure that we have law enforcement nearby just in case anything arises. So just know that we're working really hard at all levels of the state and the county and with the municipal actors to make sure that you have a safe and secure voting experience, and that the results are ones that you can trust, and that you can know that, you know, voting is accurate, the results of the election are accurate.
All right, so if you have a question, just raise your hand, and you can ask anybody whatever you want, a question. Well, Mr. Nelson, how are you? Why don't you stand up real quick? Okay. And ask your question nice and loud so we can understand it.
Okay. My question refers to the nonpartisan section of a ballot, and my question also refers to undue influence. In the case of state ballot questions, the state advertising, promoting, all the way up to election day. My particular issue is one for the city. I have a city administration that has a millage proposal on this election, and they are promoting, they're using public funds to promote this ballot question, and they are doing it all the way up to November 5th. Undue influence is a very important part of what we do, and I'd just like to know your feelings on that particular issue.
Let's get that one there. Apparently there's an issue on this Sterling Heights ballot.
Yes.
You think the city is promoting one way to vote?
Yes.
Okay, don't tell me which way to vote. Well, let's go to the Secretary of State, Deputy Secretary of State, maybe. Are there rules, now this is on the ballot now, are there rules for putting the proposal, the language on the ballot?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's a 100-word summary that the Board of Canvassers has to approve. I am aware that there is a ballot proposal on the ballot in Sterling Heights for, I think, local recreational facilities and other issues. From my understanding, and of course you're welcome to file a complaint, and this is why we have a campaign. I'm sorry?
I have.
Okay, well, our office is probably dealing with it. It takes some time. There's a lot of back and forth, and we do need to simplify the process, and we are working with the legislature to kind of speed things up, because I do think that would be appropriate when we have an election coming up. But I would say anything that is done on an educational basis, just to make sure that voters have the information of what is on the ballot, is allowed, even by governmental entities that might have a millage on the ballot. So as long as it doesn't cross the line into explicit endorsement of you must vote for this, it's allowed.
Okay, I've heard that before, and basically we have the law, MCL 169.257, which basically says that we can't use public funds to promote.
But the premise is, though, is that your challenge, though, is that the city of Sterling Heights is promoting this particular ballot question, right?
That is correct.
And then there's a law that says they can't do that.
That's correct.
So my understanding is the Secretary of State is looking at that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's looking at it right now.
You filed a complaint with our office.
Well, I filed a complaint with the Sterling Heights Police Department. I also filed a complaint with the Macomb County Sheriff's Department, and I'm on my way to file it with the state. Which one do I file it with?
That's a good question.
So
State.
you can file it with us. We have jurisdiction over campaign finance related issues, which this is what it sounds like. So if you file it with us, we'll be happy to take a look at it.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, good question. Anybody else have another question? Oh, good. Now stand up real quick, nice and loud.
My question is, would you expand on the definition of ballot harvesting and the chain of command?
Attorney General, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so, my understanding of what the traditional definition of ballot harvesting is generally speaking when you have people who are not authorized who will go out and collect absentee ballots from, whether you're talking about from a nursing home, whether you're talking about an individual's residence, and they're people who, under the law, are not permitted to do that. So we have very specific laws as to who, first of all, let me tell you that we changed the motor voter laws. So anybody can pay to transport a person to the polls. If you want to transport an eligible person to the polls, used to be we were the only state that you couldn't do this, but you couldn't pay somebody to do that. Now, let's say an organization wants to pay Lyft or Uber to go pick up voters to take them to the polls. That's perfectly legal. But what you can't do is you can't have an unauthorized person go to somebody's house and say, hey, I'm going to drop off your absentee ballot for you. I'll take it to the clerk's office, or I'm going to take it to a drop box and drop it off for you. There are certain people who can do that, right? If you are an immediate family member, if you reside in the household, if you're the person's guardian, you can do that. Even if you are a designee from the clerk's office, you can call up the clerk's office and say, hey, I don't have transportation, or I have some sort of disability that is going to make it difficult for me to bring my ballot in, and then the clerk can send somebody out and say, I'll come pick up your ballot. So that is all fine. But what you can't do is you can't just have somebody, some sort of random person, whether they're from an organization or not, go house to house and say, hey, bring me your absentee ballots and I'll go drop them off for you. You can't do that. That is illegal. That is a crime.
You've got another.
I don't know if anybody wants to expand on that is generally how I see ballot harvesting.
That is correct.
Yeah.
You've got another follow. I know you do.
Well, just the chain of command, too. I mean, because people are going to senior citizens' places and picking up the absentee ballots, and then where are they taking them? I'm not sure, because we've kind of came across that incident.
Can I follow up then maybe? Yeah. Let me get hypothetical. My absentee ballot came in the mail, and I live with my 99-year-old mother, who's kind of doesn't know a lot now, okay? But the ballot came in her name. Can I, as the son, fill it out?
No.
Maybe sign her name to it and give it to the clerk. Melanie, clerk, is that legal?
No.
Can't sign your name.
Well, she can put an X. She can put an X.
So you are not permitted to fill out somebody else's ballot and sign somebody else's name and turn that ballot in. If an individual needs assistance in completing their ballot, you can assist them, and you would have to also sign the outside of the envelope attesting to the fact that that individual requested your assistance.
So let me say, so assistance. Can I read the candidates for president to my mother? And then can she say, yes, vote for this one?
That would be the appropriate way to assist.
Can I then mark my mother's ballot?
If your mother requests that you mark it, yes.
And then
you would also, to pick,
Yeah.
the key point to that is you would then be, one, your mother would have to request it of you, and two, your mother would have to sign her own ballot envelope. And then the third piece is that you would have to sign the statement outside, next to your mother's signature, basically stating, attesting to your mother requested you to assist.
And I actually looked at that in the outside. I think it says I was assisting my mother with regard to her intent
Correct.
to vote, not mine, hers.
Correct.
That's not kind of what I was asking.
Right.
If somebody was to go with a truck and kind of go to a nursing home, pick up everybody's ballots,
It's illegal.
and then, so what do you do when you see that?
Then you would report it to your local clerk, and then I would, if it were here in Sterling Heights, then I would start to investigate that. You are not permitted to be in possession of somebody else's ballot unless you are the voter, the voter's immediate family, as Attorney General Nessel said, also an election assistant that might be an appointee of myself, or a postal service worker. Those are the permitted individuals to be handling a voted ballot.
Attorney General, is that a crime if they go to the nursing home and collect the ballots?
It is, and we've charged that before. We've charged it. We did have a case a few years back, I want to say it was Oakland County, but it may have been Macomb. And you had a woman who worked at a nursing home, and she was doing what you described, which is, you know, whether or not these people were filling out their ballots on their own or were doing it with assistance in a way that was not properly documented, she was definitely then taking the ballots and turning them in, and she got prosecuted. She went to jail. So it does not happen frequently, but where that does occur, you know, we do charge that. I will say what is okay is my parents, my elderly parents for years, asked me to come over and they review with me all of the judges on the ballot because I'm a lawyer. And every time, you know, every whatever 6 years, I'm like, yes, you should vote for Lisa Langdon. She's a very, very good judge. But you know, they asked me for my advice because they're not lawyers. And that's perfectly acceptable to ask for somebody's advice. Who do you think I should vote for? But at the end of the day, they're the ones filling out the ballot. They're the ones signing the ballot. And again, if someone else signs the ballot for them, that is not in the way that was suggested to you by the clerk, you're going to catch that signature. I mean, it's not going to be entered ultimately into the qualified voter file because the signature is not going to match.
Let me get Tony Forlini, the clerk, real quick. We're not going anywhere. This is good. Yeah.
It wasn't in Macomb, it was in Oakland, yeah, Southfield. So go to the local clerk?
The case involving the clerk or the case involving the nursing home?
The nursing home?
Melanie, can you just look that up? I know we had a case and I just don't remember the municipality right now. But yeah, we did find that somebody was involved in that behavior, and again, she went to jail.
But if the point is, if you have information about people collecting ballots, harvesting ballots, I think the issue is, where do you go? Do you go to Mr. Forlini, Melanie, Secretary of State, Attorney General, FBI? Where do you go?
You can report that to a number of different places, right? You can report it to the local police department. You can report it right to the Department of State. You can also report it to the Department of Attorney General. There's a number of places that you can make that report. And, you know, generally speaking, we try to coordinate as much as possible so that we all kind of know what each other are doing. But to make sure that somebody is, in fact, handling that case, sometimes there are multiple levels of review. Sometimes you'll have multiple law enforcement agencies that are reviewing the same information. What we try to do is not get in each other's way too much, but sometimes you'll have one investigation that's done, and then if another agency has additional questions, then they'll do even more follow-up on that. But again, I would suggest that you report it to all of those agencies.
Let me get Tony Forlini, the clerk, Macomb County Clerk. Do you want to talk, though, about either the reporting if you see something, or really, I think, an issue about filling out someone else's ballot, that type of thing? What should you do? What's legal?
Well, let me just say this. In Michigan, and this is where a lot of people get confused about elections here in Michigan. They compare it, they heard something in another state, they heard something, you know, how other states handle things. Well, these problems exist. In Michigan, we are so decentralized that it really, the questions you're asking really come down to the local clerks, because they're the ones that handle the ballots, and the ballots come in. My election staff, I have 100 employees, I've got 4 in elections, 4. And that's how we run the entire county, is with these 4 employees. So when you're talking about these specific things, they're coming to the local clerk, and the local clerks do a great job in sorting through this. And I know Melanie here has done a fantastic job in sorting these things out. And I think you've actually found some things in the past that you were able to expose and put out. So our clerks are doing the job to sort through this. And when there is a problem, we just saw one recently, our clerks step up, expose it, and we get that information out. So I'm very comfortable with the clerks we have in Macomb County and the job that they do.
All right. Okay, another question? Anybody else have another question? Let me get her. I'll come right back. Okay. I want to get everybody. I want everyone to participate. Everyone. I'll get back to you. Stand up. There you go. Okay.
All right.
I'm gonna go over here. Oh, there you go. There you go.
My question actually came very home to me this week, because I got something for a previous resident of my home. My husband, I've lived there for 12 years. My husband has lived there for about 25. We're still getting stuff from voting places. So specifically, how do we get these people off of the rosters? How do we know that somebody isn't receiving something like this, filling out one of those fraudulent things? I also have one of my husband's sons lives in Connecticut, and of course, his permanent residence is our house. I do not fill out his stuff. I let him know that something arrived and let him deal with it however he does, probably absentee ballot. But how do we deal with this stuff?
Great question.
That is a fantastic question, and that's something that I get quite frequently. We have a number of callers every day, and we get emails, and we get people coming into our office concerned about that very issue. This is what I can tell you. Third-party special interest groups buy lists of voters. They use old lists. They don't bother to update them, and they send out material, and sometimes that material looks extremely official. Any information that comes, any voting information is going to come from your local clerk, and any information that's official election mail that we send to you is going to have the official election mail logo that is approved by the United States Postal Service. But if it does not have that logo on it, it did not come from our office. So the information that you're getting is from old lists that third-party groups are using. You can discard it.
And just so if I can understand, a ballot should never come to a person who is not there. Because as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, if I want to vote absentee, I have to request an absentee, right?
That is correct. You can either request a one-time absentee, or voters can be put on the permanent ballot list, which means you would receive a ballot every election cycle. However, it does come to the person's registered address. So if a ballot comes to your address of a person who's not registered there, you need to notify your clerk's office immediately.
Is this the dead people? I was alive in 2020, but in 21 I died. And yet I still, is it possible to send a ballot to a dead person?
We update our voter rolls. Quite frankly, it's pretty much daily. With we get information from the Social Security Administration, from the county clerk's office, from the State Bureau of Elections, to take deceased voters off of our rolls.
Good?
Thank you.
Got it, great. Where is Ken? Let me go back to Ken. Oh, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, I have a related question to that. Is there something that we can do to make it illegal for candidates to print up ballot applications with all of their information that they're running for office? Is there a way that we can stop that? I received probably 7 applications, okay, which if I was that type of person, I'd sit there, fill all this out, let's see if we can confuse the city clerk, which I would never do to my city clerk.
And you would fail.
And that's factual. That's factual. But we're getting this information. It doesn't need to come, and like Melanie said, it's got to be official, and it's got to be from our clerk. Can we stop that?
I mean, I think that there are reasons why these groups send these things out. Sometimes a group might realize someone has just moved into the community, and they might need a form to update their information. And of course, there are First Amendment issues involved with this, so I'm not even sure it would be legal to outlaw that. But to the point of whether it confuses the staff, it doesn't, because once they get one application that somebody wants an absentee ballot, it's in the system. Any subsequent applications are just pieces of paper to the clerks around the state. It might confuse a voter, when that's why this is not necessarily the best thing. We should probably do more to coordinate efforts so people aren't getting 7 different applications, because that's just insane. But I do want to talk a little bit more about our voter rolls. As Melanie said, we are always updating the QVF to ensure that it's accurate, and people who are passing away are taken off pretty quickly. A federal judge recently ruled that Michigan is like the 5th best in the country in terms of keeping its voting rolls accurate and removing dead people from the rolls. We belong to something called ERIC, with our 24 states in the country plus the District of Columbia. If you move within those 24 states in the District of Columbia, it updates the other members of that community to say, hey, this person has moved to our state, and we take them off the rolls.
Can I just
get other information? We remove people.
I don't mean to interrupt, but let me just say, there was a federal judge case, I guess, Michigan's the 5th best in the country. I would think, maybe I'm wrong, but some people may not believe that. How do you this piece of misinformation, when in reality you say Michigan is very good at getting, say, dead people off the ballot, but how do you convey that? And is there anything of objective evidence that can be put out there to, for those people that say, I don't believe it, that they're wrong?
Well, just go to michigan.gov/vote. We have a page on that website where you can see how many people are slated to be removed from the rolls every single year. We have a big batch coming off because the Secretary of State proactively sent out mailings during the pandemic that were very controversial, by the way, and when people's mail comes back to us, it demonstrates to us, oh, this person's moved, we need to put them on the countdown so they can be removed. We remove about 100,000 people from the rolls every year who pass away. That's an objective number, which you can FOIA from our office.
If I die on Monday, how soon do you think I'll be off the voter roll?
Well, we hope that doesn't happen.
No.
Number one.
Thank you.
But you're a pretty famous figure, so we would know, and your local clerk would take the step to remove you from the roll, because we look at obituaries too. So any type of verifiable information that is out there can be relied on to update the QVF.
But we're soon, though, before the election, probably.
Yes.
Right? Gotcha.
And Charlie, and these questions come to me all the time, and I always say, hey, bring that information down, let's check it out. And since I've been clerk for the last almost 4 years, never have we once found somebody that was dead that was on the voter rolls. So I'm welcome to, and that's the best way to prove it to people is to bring them in. We'll look at it and see if that's the case. And if it's not, they see it, and usually they feel pretty good after that. So
You're talking about the obituary, not the person, I'm assuming.
transparency. Transparency is key.
I got it. Attorney General, did you want to add?
Yeah. You know, I will say that, and I'm sure you guys see this much more than I do, but, you know, sometimes I hear about folks who will write in, you know, send an Excel spreadsheet in to the clerk's office and say, all of these people here need to be removed. There's this other address that they have. And what I hear about quite often is, yeah, sometimes people do have 2 addresses, you know? My children have 2 addresses. They have one at our house, they have the other at their colleges that they attend. And legally, they can register to vote at either one of those places. There are a lot of people who are snowbirds. They have an address in Michigan, and they have address maybe someplace in a warmer climate. Or people who have a place up north that they frequent. You know, that's not uncommon in Michigan, right? And you know, active members of the military, or people who just work in other states. They may have 2 addresses. So what I hear on a regular basis is that somebody will send in something. Sometimes it's outdated. Sometimes it's not recent. Sometimes it's from 2 years ago or 4 years ago. So it's going to be wrong and not be reflective of what the clerk's office has or the Secretary of State's office has. But sometimes it's just a person who legitimately has 2 addresses and really can vote in either place. They can only vote in one. They have to make that decision. But just because a person has 2 addresses doesn't mean that they get removed from the voter rolls.
We have another question? Stand up. There you go.
Stand up, stand up.
Stand up. We want to see you.
So, first thing I'd like to say, Charlie, you introduced our clerk, Melanie Ryska, as the clerk for the City of Sterling Heights. But what you didn't mention was that she is the president of the statewide Michigan Association of Municipal Clerks. And I think the best clerk in the state. I'm not prejudiced.
Are you from Sterling Heights?
I'm from Sterling Heights.
Okay.
But this is not really a question, but I'd like you to explain the procedure. So last February, Charlie, I worked as an election worker inside. First time I've ever done it. I was really blown away by the redundancy of the whole process. And I'm just wondering, Melanie, if you can talk about the process of the day of the election workers from the moment they open up all the equipment to the end, all the checklists, what happens when they close the poll, come back here to the community center, and then Mr. Forlini, if you can talk about what happens when all that information is delivered to the county. Thank you.
Good one. Okay.
Oh, that's a lot.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll try to make it sort of a Cliff's Notes version because there's a lot. So workers show up at a precinct at 6 a.m., polls open at 7. They have to set up the precinct, so they have people put up signs, booths, and so on. They check seal numbers, serial numbers of all the equipment that they have, and they verify that those serial and seal numbers are reported appropriately in the paper poll book. They then turn the machines on and they run a zero tape. What that means is they're verifying that there are no votes cast on that tabulator before voters come in and start to cast their ballots. Everybody signs that tape. Voters come throughout the day, they vote their ballots, they tabulate their ballots. At the end of the night, they verify the number of ballots tabulated compared to the electronic poll book, the number of voters who showed up compared to the number of applications they have. So those 3 numbers need to match. Those numbers are recorded in said poll book. They then seal, they remove the result stick and they seal it into a separate state-approved container. And that seal number is recorded on the poll book. The ballots get stored in a state-approved container and it is sealed and it's certified by 2. Everything is done by 2 members of the team, and it's 1 Democrat, 1 Republican at all times. But the ballots are sealed into a state-approved container, and then that number is recorded into the paper poll book. Totals tapes are run. Everybody at the precinct signs the totals tape. So what a totals tape is it's the totals of all the ballots that were cast in that polling location. And so that number on there is verified to the number of ballots or the number on the screen of ballots cast, the number of applications, the number of voters in the list, right? All of these numbers have to match. Then they bring the ballots, the ballot container, they bring the memory stick, they bring all of their paperwork back to actually right here in this room to our receiving board, and a team, a bipartisan team, so one Republican, one Democrat, receiving board takes all of their paperwork and they review everything for accuracy. They make sure all the numbers match, and they make sure that the ballot container is sealed properly so that we can put it into storage and so on. And then they separate the paperwork in the poll book into 3 separate envelopes. One envelope goes to the county clerk, another envelope that has a copy of all these seal numbers and number of voters and totals tapes and all of this. One goes to the county clerk, one goes to the judge of probate, and then one comes to myself. And then we take, at the end of the night, we take all of those, all of the paperwork and the result sticks over to Macomb County. Cliff's notes.
Wow, that's a lot of work just to secure your ballot, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things I mentioned earlier about the modems, we had already, in years past, gotten the modem results in at 8:05, and our results were in pretty quick. Since since 2020, Macomb County was the first to remove the modems, and subsequently the state has mandated that all modems be taken out of all the tabulators, with the exception, which I'm not happy about, the Hart tabulators. And it makes it look like their results are getting in quicker than Macomb County. And that's a problem, a little bit of a problem for us. I'm going to say that I don't like that, but there was issues with some tabulator companies, one that Macomb County uses and the Dominion machines that other counties use, that they remove the modems. So I get it. I just wish they would do it across the board, because that way it's a fair playing field. What we have done in Macomb, Melanie brought up that they bring the memory sticks. I've asked our local clerks if they can bring us the memory sticks earlier, before the paperwork, so that the media, as well as the citizens, can start getting results earlier. And for such a large community, Melanie does a great job getting them to us. There's other communities that do a fantastic job getting them 9:30, I'll get their sticks, which that's what the public is looking for. But it's still secured. It's secured to us. We break the seal to put them into the system that we have, the software we have, so it gets out to the public, gets out to the media. And most of our clerks do a great job in doing that. Not all, but most. So
I talked to the Melanie before, and I said, what percentage of the voting turnout do you think will happen in Sterling Heights? And I think you said 80% or so for this presidential election?
About 70. I suspect 70, 75, hopefully.
Hedge your bet. That's good, 70, 75%. When do you think that we will get the results of the election on November 5th?
And it's going to depend on the community, because we at the county depend on the local communities to bring these in. So some will have the results in before 10 o'clock.
You think we'll get local results by 10?
I'll give you one concern of mine is we've got one very large community in Macomb County that's not doing a pre-tabulation of the absentee ballots.
Which one is it?
It's Warren.
Okay.
They're not doing it, which causes a problem, because people are going to be waiting for those results later and have assumptions that are not true, that something wrong is going on.
And pre-tabulation means on the absentee ballots, you can start to put them in the counter
yes,
on
they can
election
start counting 8 days before.
Oh, 8 days you can do it before.
They can do it 8 days before.
Are you doing that in Sterling Heights? You're putting the absentees?
Yes. So we do early tabulation of our AVs, and then we're going to start 1 week before on that Monday.
So let me ask you this. Can I spoil my vote if I do it absentee? In other words, I want to vote, and then I want to change my vote. Can I change my vote?
You can spoil your ballot up until 2 Fridays before the election, the day before early voting starts.
And
So October 25th.
So it's October 20th. Early voting starts October 26th.
Correct.
And that is a Saturday?
Correct.
So on Friday is the last day that I can change my vote.
Correct.
Okay, that's good to know. I didn't know that. Secretary of State, Deputy Secretary of State, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about the speed of the results. This is one of the reasons why we have all of these reforms. To have early voting so that those results can be ready for 8 p.m. We have the pre-tabulation, the early tabulation. All those results can hopefully be ready to be reported by 8 p.m. and get those results out there quicker. Now, there are a lot of different communities around the state who have different systems and different ways of going about it. And it really ultimately depends on how close the top of the ticket is, because I know that's the one that's on top of everybody's mind. How quickly are we going to get the results for the presidential election? We know as election officials that is how people judge the effectiveness of an election system, is how quickly the results get out. So we're very sensitive to that. So I'm hopeful that we will know by the early hours of Wednesday, hopefully, if it's really close, which it looks like it's going to be pretty close. That's why everybody's vote is important. Hopefully it's sooner than that, but that's kind of where we're
So just so I understand, because I've got your number now. So every media is going to be calling you, the national, because Michigan is a big state.
Yes.
And although the local races are very important, they are. However, the presidential race. So give me a wild prediction, a realistic prediction. When do you think we'll have Michigan's results of the presidential race?
I'm not going to give you a time. Sorry.
Can I follow up though? I'm also not going to make a prediction, but I just do want to say a few other things. This is not a novel approach, this pre-processing. And it's why we always know in Ohio and Florida, we know right away what their results are. And it's always been, to me, why do we have to wait in Michigan to find out? Because we did not have these laws in place. And to me, that's why it was so important that we implement the same laws as some of those other states, because all of the, first of all, accuracy, first and foremost, is what, there's nothing more important than accuracy. But what we've learned is that you can have the accuracy and also the timeliness as long as you allow for this pre-processing. And, again, nobody knows the results of the pre-processing. I mean, that's not something that is conveyed to people. But just being in that place where, the elections close and the clerks can do a better job of getting their results out right away, it really does reduce some of the shenanigans that we see. And when I say shenanigans, I don't mean actually election fraud, but just even the perception of it. And if you remember, obviously, we have to go back to 2020, and I recall things like, there was a WXYZ reporter who had some camera equipment and recording equipment just to, so that he could use video for his story. And somebody was like, look, they're bringing in, midnight ballots. And he's like, this is my equipment. Now, it doesn't mean that there was anything wrong, by the way, with bringing those ballots in later, because up until the moment that the election closes, I mean, if you put your absentee ballot in a drop box at 7:59 p.m., the day of the election, it still counts. Somebody still has to pick that stuff up out of the drop boxes and then bring it over to the clerk's office, to a county center. So there's nothing wrong with that, but the fact is I think each of us want to have as much in the way of results as we can have as quickly as possible. Again, just like so many other states have done for a very long time, because we're all anxious to know the results of the election. But with every hour that passes, in addition to post the election, you hear these conspiracy theories, and we want to limit that as much as possible. And I think that these new laws give us the ability to get those results that much quicker.
What do you? Do you think the election can be rigged?
No. Why? Why do you say that?
Some people say, because of, we just talked misperceptions out there.
Yeah.
And we did 2020, for example. But some people to this day, it's still a campaign issue. Rigged elections, the ballots in Detroit. I know that report. And that's got to frustrate you, frustrates all of us. But I think the purpose of this is to get rid of those misconceptions. And I'm hearing from the top of the, anybody has an opportunity, ask them a question. Tell them, explain the process. But from what I'm hearing is that you guys do not think that this election can be rigged. No way.
No, because there are too many safeguards in place. Now, I'm not going to say that the election is going to go perfectly, because elections are ultimately administered by human beings. And the last time I checked, every single person in this room is a flawed human being on some level. So there are going to be mistakes. But there are a lot of different safeguards with verifying people's signatures. When you go to a voting location, either on election day or for early voting, if you have your voter ID on you, you have to present it to verify who you are. If you don't have it on your person and you need to sign an affidavit, it's done under the penalty of perjury. But that is extremely rare. We have no more, I think, statewide in the last presidential election, maybe 3,000 people signed that affidavit because most people have their ID on them. So there are a lot of different safeguards to ensure that the vote is accurate and that it actually reflects the people's will. And it's something that we all take seriously. All four of us took an oath of office upon taking our offices to do the people's business, to uphold the laws of the state and uphold the Constitution, and we take that seriously.
Last question.
Well, before we go to
I'm
that,
sorry.
Because I wanted to finish up with what the county is doing, and we receive all this information, and our board of canvassers now go through the lengthy process. They have 14 days to certify the election. And so all these safeguards that you've seen get double checked by the county, by our board of canvassers, and they find, every once in a while, they find something's off by one, or they question it, and we have the clerks come down and try to figure it out, and sometimes we go through a recount with the tabulator to see how things are matching up. And so I got to tell you, I keep stressing this, the fact that the legislators allowed for 8 days of early tabulation is a tremendous benefit for the stress level of the local clerks and for us. Last election, I got a call at 9:30 in the morning when it was pretty much determined, not all the votes were in yet, but that I had won my election, and my predecessor called me, congratulated me at 9:30 in the morning. And then I don't know what time the final results came in on these absentee ballots, but that was a problem. Absentee ballots, people were judging it based on the fact that a certain demographic came in late, the absentee ballots, and turned the election. Well, hopefully we won't have this issue, because now they can tabulate these early, and these results are going to all come in reasonably well in most communities.
We have a
That's
member,
the big one.
We have a member of the legislature right here, I believe, right?
Yeah. We've done everything we can to make sure that these elections are going to be fair and safe for everyone in the state of Michigan. But Dana talked about conspiracy theories. So there's a conspiracy theory out there that Russian operatives have been hacking our elections. These tabulators are not hooked up to the internet. So how the hell could that happen?
All right, and that's why we did the forensic audit in Macomb County. And could there have been some crazy thing that happened? Yes, but it didn't happen, okay? So once you throw a theory out there, I want you to prove it to me. Prove to me why that's the case. You had the case with the pillow guy. They put all these IP addresses on the screen. Well, guess what we did? We started screenshotting because we were serious about this. We wanted to get to the bottom of it. We screenshotted them. And he had, what was it, $3 million or $5 million reward if you were proven wrong. We got all excited because those IP addresses did not relate, even though it said Macomb County, they did not relate to our election server at all. And so I'm thinking, man, $3 million. I wonder if the county's going to split it with me once we expose this. Then he reneged on it. So I always appreciate when somebody brings it to me. Can you prove it? And if you can't, and if I can prove otherwise, we're always trying to prove us right, even though they have really an obligation to prove that they're right. I always appreciate people bringing it to us. Not once have we found any legitimacy, and we're looking for it. Trust me, when we did this forensic audit, I would have been a national hero had I found fraud. We found nothing.
And then finally, at what point are you recommending that people bring their ballot in instead of mailing it?
Good one.
Yeah, so we recommend within the last 14 days that you actually physically bring in your ballot either to the clerk's office or to a drop box. By that point, we just don't have the confidence that the mail system is fast enough to get the ballot back. Of course, always doing it through the clerk's office is great. You can also bring your absentee ballot to your early vote center or on election day and actually put it into the tabulator yourself.
Can you talk about tracking your ballot?
Yeah, and the other thing that we will have through the Prop 2 ballot measure, the amendment, is that you can go to michigan.gov/vote and you can track your absentee ballot when it's being sent to you and when it's being sent back. And actually now, just as of the last week, you can sign up for notifications on that website as well to give you an email that says, yes, we've received your ballot. Oh, there might be an issue with your signature. Please call your clerk to verify it. So there are a lot of protocols in place to make sure that you know where your ballot is and that it's secure and that it's verified and that it counts.
Okay, okay, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to piggyback on that, and I agree on the last, at minimum, the last 14 days, make sure that you either bring your ballot back to us personally or put it in one of the drop boxes. Or, as the Deputy Secretary stated, you can take your AV ballot and tabulate it at early voting, which we highly encourage that as well. But I know there's rumors about, or some kind of disinformation about drop boxes. Some voters are feeling uncomfortable putting their ballots in a drop box. All drop boxes are video monitored. All of our drop boxes are picked up daily, so by an election assistant, goes around to every drop box and picks up daily. On election day, we pick up multiple times. So you can, feel confident that if you utilize a municipal ballot drop box, it is actually getting into our hands and we are processing it.
Okay, the very last question now. Go ahead.
Yes, I would like to expand or kind of segue on, this is probably Mr. Forlini and maybe Melissa, on the EPB laptops. After we sign in with our username and passcodes, the laptop's in airplane mode. We can take that out of airplane mode into the internet. So, I mean, it's maybe not connected to a county or city server, but it does open the laptop to the internet, if I'm not mistaken. I've seen that because I worked the polls. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so all of the electronic poll book laptops that go out to the polling locations, you are correct. They're all on airplane mode. Is there a possibility that somebody does, take it off of airplane mode? They potentially could. We train our election chairs and co-chairs and all of the inspectors to not do that. And we also ask our chairs that if they do view that and it's off of airplane mode, to put it back on. In addition, and I'm not sure if you're even aware, or if, I don't know who would be able to best answer that. My understanding is that there are spot checks done throughout the state periodically. I'm not quite sure who does it to see who maybe doesn't have their airplane mode on, and then I would be notified to actually notify that precinct, like you're in violation of our policy.
All right, I think that is going to conclude the forum today. Thank you. That's why we want to go down, if you can do it, right down the line. The biggest piece of misinformation that you want to clear up. What is it, and how do we clear it up? Think about it. Mr. Forlini, quick though, go.
Well, let me just say, we've done everything we can within Macomb County to ensure this election is going to go free and clear. The biggest misinformation is coming from things outside of Macomb County, outside of the state, and I was focusing on what we do. And my jurisdiction is Macomb County. I don't like talking to anybody about anything outside of Macomb County because I can't control it, I can't see it. Macomb County is clean, and I want to make sure everyone understands. And I'm sure it is through the rest of the state, but I answer to Macomb County, not what's happening in Arizona or South Carolina or wherever they want to bring things up. We have paper ballots here, that's the other big thing.
Melanie.
I think just in general, the mistrust or information that, or misinformation out there that people can't trust our election process. Like I said in the very beginning, our equipment is tested. We have watermark ballots. We have hundreds of people working just in Sterling Heights alone to make sure that we follow all the rules and regulations. I take a lot of pride in the work that I do, as does the rest of my team, and I would never do anything to jeopardize the integrity of myself, my team, this election process, inclusive of my family and all of that. So I'm not going to jeopardize my livelihood and to try to cheat on something. So I can assure people that our system works, it is secure, and our results are accurate.
Aghogho Edevbie.
Just to piggyback on the Dropbox point, I think there's always this view that, well, if you just put a bunch of stuff in the Dropbox, they just count all those ballots. No, all the ballots that are received in the Dropbox are verified that they actually belong to an eligible voter, and then during the canvass process, we look at how many people in the poll book checked in to either vote on election day, vote during the early vote period, or ask for an absentee ballot, versus what is on the tabulator tape. And if they're out of balance and there's not an explanation, we look at that. And of course, sometimes there are issues where something is off by 1 or 2, and that's normal, it happens throughout the state. But you would never have a situation where something was out of balance by 100 votes and that the clerk would just say, oh, it's okay.
Never.
Never, because we would investigate it and we would know that there was something wrong, and we would maybe ultimately turn it over to the Attorney General.
Attorney General Dana Nessel.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that when there are instances where you've had recounts, the recounts end up being almost always exactly the same. I've seen cases where there was a 1 or 2 vote difference, but that's it. And I think the most famous / infamous case of that we can recall in recent, American history, Michigan history, was Antrim County, where there was a software error that led to an incorrect result that was quickly corrected, but ultimately they did a hand recount of that county. I don't remember them seeing a difference. I don't know if there was a 1 vote difference possibly, but I mean, it was the same exact result, even though there had been all these conspiracies that had been floated nationally, internationally about, oh my gosh, this is so inaccurate, and it turns out it was completely accurate. The other thing I want to say is this: anybody can make a generalized accusation, but when there's no evidence to support it, you really have to question that. And what we hear routinely, and let's go back to the non-citizens voting question, I hear all the time, oh, there are thousands of non-citizens that are voting here in Michigan, but then no one can seem to point to who are these people? Do you have any specific information, like what are their names, or at least what are the locations where this is occurring? And then all of a sudden, they're like, well, no, I don't have that. It's just something that I heard. Well, I could start a rumor that, I'm likely to be the next Miss America for our next pageant, but it doesn't make it true. People can say anything, but when it's completely unsubstantiated and there is no evidence to support it whatsoever, you should very much disregard it as something that is untruthful. And to know when you do have any kind of specific information, we 100%, each and every time, will investigate that claim to see if it can be corroborated or not. And we take that very, very seriously at the Department of Attorney General. The same thing with the Department of State, with all of the local clerks and the county clerks. Again, they take great pride in their work. And all of us just want one thing and one thing only, and that is to see the will of the people prevail, whatever that is. And it's not up to any of us to make the decision as to who wins or loses an election, even though we might all have our own opinions as to who we would like to see in certain offices or not. But at the end of the day, as you heard, we take an oath of office to do our job, to do it fairly, impartially, and to do it in accordance with the law. And as a result, we have the safest, the most secure, and the most accurate elections any place, I would say in America, possibly any place in the world. And you can count on, when you see the results of those elections, that's really who won or who lost an election. And you should feel good about participating in democracy. You should know that your vote is your voice, and your vote is going to count, and it's going to be accurately tabulated.
3 ways to vote. Absentee, do it right now. Early voting, October 26th through November 3rd. And of course, Election Day, November 5th. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.